There's a story that I don't know what to make of. I genuinely don't know what to make of it. And it very, very, very much involves somebody from what you could loosely describe as the Charlie Kirk universe, a universe I know next to nothing about. So I think I'd heard of this woman more than I'd heard of him. But if you'd asked me to pin down precisely why I'd heard of her or what she stood for, I think I would have struggled. I think I probably would have chalked her up as one of the commentators of colour whose opinions seem to align more with people who often have quite negative things to say about people of colour. And I choose my words very carefully. I'll be diplomatic in this space because it's a very, very sensitive stuff. But I'm talking about somebody called Candace Owens. And immediately, the multiplicity of reactions to that name kind of proves my point. I may even have pronounced it incorrectly, just as proof of my own ignorance. Candice, is it? Candace Owens. So some of you are going, oh, yeah, thank God James is talking about this. Some of you are going, oh, all hail Candace Owens. Some of you are going, yeah, God, she's awful. I can't believe he's talking about her. And some of you are going, sorry, who? Sorry, what, pardon? Sorry, what part? Sorry, Jack, what, who? And that's the point, isn't it? I don't know how do we count? We need some sort of like digital finger pad that you listen to the show with, and I ask a question, I immediately get, and every single person has to answer that question, so we can't get any skewing towards engagement. So, you know, you can ask a question sometimes and you get a 100% answer, but only 10% or 1% of the people listening have bothered answering it, so it's worthless. It doesn't prove anything. It's like a Daily Express phone-in poll. It's absolutely no scientific or epistemological value whatsoever. But I wish we could force you to answer. Who has heard of Candace Owens? Hands up if you've heard of her. You haven't? No. There you go. It proves it. Why are you shaking your head like that? I'm supremely unsurprised that he hasn't heard of her. Why would he have done? I had hardly heard of Charlie Kirk last week, and some people find that shocking, and I do this stuff for a living, allegedly. So, and remember, I was on Twitter quite a lot until about a year ago. So, Candace Owens is being sued by Brigitte Macron, the wife of the French President. And if you don't know what she is suing her for, you might want to sit down. Because it's hard to think of a better illustration of what I've just tried to explain to you. Not taking these people seriously because they are mad. Right? Whether it's the British versions or the American versions, you sit here and say, how am I supposed to take these people seriously? They're mad. Because what she is being sued for is a claim, I kid you not, that Brigitte Macron is a man. How many people are suddenly thinking about Isleworth Crown Court? If you're not suddenly thinking about Isleworth Crown Court, then... Oh, no, that was Michelle Obama, wasn't it? Or was it Brigitte Macron as well? No, it was Michelle Obama. Then you don't pay enough attention to this programme. So I found myself... Oh, and this is actually relevant. I went through a period of telling you this story every day for about 2 months because it stuck with me. It hit me so hard at the time. So I was on jury service, right, at Isleworth Crown Court. I never got on a flipping jury, but there I was, minding my own business. Eavesdropping on a conversation at the next table where and I don't know why I think this is relevant, but it is, you know, an apparently educated, intelligent, well-presented woman was explaining to her fellow jurors, among other things, I've forgotten some of it, I bet you can remember more of it than I can. She was explaining to her fellow jurors that Volodymyr Zelensky had stolen all the money that had been sent to Ukraine to help them fight Russia. God knows what they're fighting Russia with if he's nicked all the money. And that he owned the 3 biggest yachts in the world, and she could prove it because she had pictures of some yachts. So she passed her phone around the table where there were some yachts on her phone. And that proves, A, that Volodymyr Zelensky owned them, and B, that he'd bought them with all the money that he'd stolen from the Ukrainian people that had been sent there for aid. So you find yourself thinking, where does she get her information from? And what I didn't find myself thinking at the time was, should I be in that space pointing out how bonkers it is? It reminded me of vaccines a little bit. and the grifters who have almost just moved from grift to grift, waiting for the one that works, telling ridiculous lies about vaccines, or telling ridiculous lies about the 2020 American election, or telling ridiculous lies about this, or telling ridiculous lies about free speech in this country. And they're all grifting in the same sort of space. They've all got their noses in the same sort of trough. And every now and then one of them gets a right lovely old truffle, and they snaffle it up, and it becomes their way of life. They might set up a free speech organisation, or they might become champion anti-vax activists, and it's all nonsense, and it's all lies, and it's all ridiculous to people like you and people like me. So when does it stop being ridiculous? When do you start taking the ridiculousness seriously? And Brigitte Macron has decided that that moment is now. It is extraordinary that anybody would even bother to sue someone, that a woman would bother to sue someone for claiming that she is a man. Isn't it? Because you thought you lived in a world where nobody could take that position seriously. You thought you lived in a world where nobody could take that position seriously. But what this story suggests is that Candace Owens is taken seriously enough for this to have caused serious harm to Brigitte Macron. Serious emotional and personal harm. Macron himself has spoken about it, saying last month, "They advised us not to sue. But it has taken on such magnitude in the United States that we had to act." He told Paris Match magazine that the prolific podcaster, quote, "knew very well that she was using false news to cause damage in the service of an ideology and with established connections with the far right." I again apologise for not knowing the answer to this question, because I increasingly think that perhaps I should. But what's the ideology that this is part of? 0345 60600973. So the President of France and his wife are now to present. I feel so sorry for this woman, I could weep. Imagine having to go through this. You know, when you are in public life, or you are married to someone in public life, that your head extends so far above the parapet that you've got no idea where the next attack is going to come from or what the next attack is going to be. But I feel so sorry for this woman, because I read this morning that she is now to present scientific evidence and photographs to prove that she is a woman as they pursue this libel suit in the United States. The determination to quash these lies is such that this woman, who is 72 years old, feels she has no choice but to expose herself to this sort of scrutiny. And I had no idea, when I reeled in shock from that woman in the jewellery room at Isleworth Crown Court, that I was actually scratching the surface of a much, much bigger phenomenon. Even, to use Macron's own words, even an ideology. I presume that the ideology, for want of a better word, has something to do with trans people. But I don't know that for sure. I just mentioned that to highlight how authentic my ignorance in this matter is. So, I mean, I've got a side order of what the heck is going on. 0345 60600973. What on earth is going on here? If you know more about that world, you can be my spirit guide through it. But I want you to tell me whether you think she's doing the right thing. In many ways, you probably need to know more about the world inhabited by Candace Owens and the late Charlie Kirk than I do. I mean, the more you know about the world that Candace Owens inhabits, and she used to work for the Turning Point organisation. Sorry, that's why I mentioned it. You probably, I don't know whether that's true. The more you know about that world, then the more you will be able to explain, or the more informed perhaps your opinion will be on whether or not Brigitte Macron is doing the right thing here. Because my attitude to absolute nonsense has almost always been to ignore it. And it depends in some part. You speak to famous people who consider suing for libel, for example. You can't really be libelled by somebody who is not taken seriously. You would, for example, struggle in a libel court. Not only would you run up enormous bills, but you would also struggle to prove reputational damage if the attempts to inflict damage were being undertaken by obvious idiots. So, I mean, libel lawyers can correct me on this. In fact, libel lawyers would be particularly welcome to ring in, although I'm not paying. 0345 606 0973 is the number that you need. Quite often, even though something is an obvious lie and an obvious libel, you can't prove reputational damage, because how could somebody who is ridiculous damage your reputation? But Candace Owens, the calculation by the Macrons is, Candace Owens is clearly taken seriously enough to cause genuine reputational damage and genuine emotional harm. But I still don't know if this is the right thing to do. Is she doing the right thing, or is she going to make things worse? And that's the question. 0345 606 0973. I think I'll break it down, if I may, rather than saying be my spirit guide through this world. Why does Candace Owens do this? 0345 606 0973. And is Brigitte Macron doing the right thing by responding in this way? It's 11:19. Why do they tell these lies about Brigitte Macron, about Michelle Obama, presumably about others? And are the Macrons, for whom I feel absolutely enormous sympathy, what a hideous thing to be caught up in, but that's not the same as thinking that they should fight it in court. What do you think? Should they be fighting it in court? And why is this woman doing this thing that she's doing?